of Public Education and Advocacy at NACADA. Welcome, madam.
Thank you.
Wow, we've seen a lot of things, and even before we touch on a report that actually all the media houses, I can tell you for a fact, on Monday we did write a lot of reports regarding the status of drugs and substance abuse among primary school pupils in Kenya. And something that we have been talking with you is that you've told us that that report was done in 2018 and released in 2019. Can you just a brief overview of the same?
Okay, thank you. I would say that this is actually the second report that we have done, because in 2016 we had a study that was done for, again, establishing the status of alcohol and drug abuse in secondary schools. So that was done in 2016. So this is what informed the primary school survey, because some of the findings from that survey is that substance use actually begins earlier than high school. So it necessitated us to go back to, do another survey, and you can see we did it in collaboration with CUPRA, so that we establish what is the status in primary schools. Yeah, so from the surveys, what we do, we find out in terms of knowledge level, are students aware of the substances, the various substances of abuse, and then also find out if they have ever used. We'd also want to find out if they are currently using, or when was the last time they ever used. Yeah. So you see that then informs the prevalence that has been in the stations for a while. But other than that, we also look at the risks. What are the risk factors and what are the protective factors? Because when you talk about alcohol and substance use, the drivers are about the risks. What is it that then motivates young people to begin to use drugs? Yeah.
And of course, we have a lot of time to talk about this report and what is currently happening in the country. I do remember, perhaps we can start with what CS Magoha talked about. He knows very well that there's student unrest. He knows very well that, of course, students have not been in school for the last 9 months. And there's something that he said that, of course, raised a lot of questions, and, of course, some supported, and some talked about no, we cannot go back to this. And that was the introduction of corporal punishment. And I remember, I think it was in January the 28th this year, he talked about introducing caning in school. I do remember I cleared high school more than 20 years ago, and when I was in school, the msita was the 6 strokes of the cane were very, very, very rampant in schools for even very, very small offenses like noise making. But Basic Education Act Section 36 did abolish corporal punishment in schools, and even talked about 100,000 shillings fine for any teacher that beats up a student, or an imprisonment of 6 months. But CS Magoha, I don't know whether my director can find that clip so that we may hear exactly what Magoha talked about. But as a clip is being prepared, kindly comment on that.
Well, now I know you'd want to turn back to where you have been, because when you listen to the debate, there is more of I went through this and it is what shaped me. Another school of thought will be no, that cannot happen anymore. Yeah. And for sure, it's not just the Education Act, but also the Children Act. That is what also necessitated the abolishing of caning, because you see that is considered cruelty, and it actually violates the rights of the children. Yeah. So really, I don't know if caning would actually help, because you see that's actually a form of violence. Yeah. And
indeed, because some are talking about a kid who is over 7 years old. When you talk about caning, that is already something that will not shape that kid. And of course, we've seen our parents, even when growing up, they were really used the cane, but nowadays that has changed. Away from that, looking at the cases of indiscipline, unrest during our time, were unheard of. We only used to hear about the University of Nairobi rioting. I remember Technical University then was Kenya Polytechnic and the Kenya Institute of Mass Communication. We had some issues, and perhaps they go throw stones in town. That is the only time that we were hearing about corporal punishment back then. But the matrix has changed. We don't hear about universities in roads, but now we are seeing children as young as primary school children turning on their teachers. Is it the society or bad parenting, as Magoha said?
Yeah, I would say that it's a combination of many things, including the bad parenting. And if you look at the survey, again, that came out from, particularly from the secondary school survey, because it showed that in as much as the school environment is no longer drug-free, initiation of alcohol and even drug use begins at home. Yeah. So it is over the holidays, it is at home, so it means that there are things that are happening in the home environment that then contribute to the substance use. So there is that heightened use. And probably if you look at maybe in the olden days, again, you did not have as much substance use, or there was some kind of regulation. There is also the pressure that comes from being a student. You know, I don't know 20 years ago how competitive it was compared to now. And when you talk about, you only saw university students, even then you will see a pattern. When were they going on strike? You can be sure that exams are close. Yeah, so that is actually a stressor. So if you look at our current situation, what is happening? Children have been home for a long time. Of course, there are many people who tried to have them do online, which you know does not work. Yeah, you know, if you're behind a screen, chances that you are logged in and absent are also very high.
Indeed.
Yeah, and we also know that not many children went through that kind of environment. So it means that so many of them did not look at their books. And even if they did, what was also happening in the environment? You find that there was a lot of uncertainty, because one time the CS for education would say the schools are going to close, the next time they are going to open, the next time it says 2020 is lost, the next time, well, we are going to open. You know, that also causes uncertainty among the learners. So, you know, they give up.
Yes.
And so when suddenly you say, okay, now everybody, and remember even before the opening of schools, it was mooted that the ones who went to school, the class 8s and the form 4s, would remain back as the others go to school. And then suddenly all of them have go to school. That's a stressor.
Yeah, on 20th January, I'm told that clip is ready. Education CS championed the reintroduction of caning in schools to curb rising incidents of unrest and indiscipline in cases. Let's first listen into what the CS had to say on 28th of January in Kisii County.
Capital punishment will be reintroduced back in schools as long as it is properly used. For the female child, you shall use the hand, extended hand. For the boy child, the very well formed backside. And the stick to be used should be standardized so that the child can, the idea is to inflict a bit of pain so that the child can know this one is a no-go.
That is Education CS Professor George Magoha on 28th of January, talking about the ministry could rethink about introduction of caning in schools to curb the rising cases of indiscipline in schools. But of course, it was met with a mixed concoction of solutions. Others supporting and others, of course, saying that was outlawed in 2001. But when we rope in the issue of drug abuse, we've seen violent students and even not only students, we've seen people violent because of using drugs. And now we are talking about the reintroduction of corporal punishment in schools, when we also have a problem. We have a report that shows that a lot of school-going children are on drugs. Would that be a very strong conclusion of trouble?
Oh, thank you for that. I would not really say that most students are actually on drugs.
A lot.
They are at risk.
Yes.
They are at risk, but they are not using. Because even when you look at the survey, is actually not reflecting that most of them. And you know, again, when you talk about most, then that is the message that the young people also get, that everybody is using. So if everybody is using, I want to be part of everybody. And you see, that also drives. But in actual sense, most children are not using drugs and have never even tried. So the message that we should be, you know, looking at even the positive end, that so many are not using. You know, why are we focusing on the ones that are using, whereas so many of us are not using? You know, that is likely to also move them to the other end. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that we do not have children who are using. Now, when you combine you know, caning as a way of changing behavior, it really doesn't. Yeah, there is no study that has shown that that when you actually cane people, then that will actually change the behavior. Because what is it that is driving that behavior? And it is the one that should help to inform what can be corrected. So when you see aggression, you see anger, it could be as a result of something else. So it's about finding what are the underlying issues, so that then you can see what you see may not be exactly what you get, because underlying issues could be there are challenges. Like we've said, schools have suddenly opened. Then you say KCSE and KCPE will be in March, and I have not been looking at my books. You know, that is likely to bring a lot of anxiety in the children. Then the home environment, remember, has no structure compared to the school. So if you look at the school environment, you know, you arrive in school at this time, there is a whole schedule that runs through until you go to sleep. Now, when you look at the home environment, probably that was not there. So that sudden change also has its own effect. So caning would not resolve those issues. Yeah.
Indeed, and a very comprehensive report on how the drug status and substance abuse among primary schools pupils in Kenya is a comprehensive. So I would love us to now get deeper into this, but before